Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about natural EQ, i.e. mic placement. Now, this is more to make you just aware of this. It's not a video on how to record and where to put the mic and stuff like this. This is a video on how mic placement can affect the sound. So when you're listening to a track or anything like that, where you put a mic and the type of mic you put in front of it along with the mic that you do put in front of it will affect the sound. For example, if you put a 414 in front of it instead of a Shure SM57, you're going to get two very, very different sounds because they're made for different things, and they're even different types of microphones entirely. One's a dynamic, one's a condenser. Now, I'm going to pull this back, and basically in the critical listening series that you're watching right now, we are looking more at how can this affect our sound. So when you listen to an orchestra, you got to wonder, where did they put the mics? How did they put the mics? How did they augment it? And sometimes you can find this information by looking up a studio, looking up the records it produces. You could look at pictures. You dig into information. And the best way, obviously, is to actually grab a microphone, stick it in front of something, and begin recording. All my tutorials are recorded. Obviously, it's recorded with a Shure SM57 pretty close to my face, like a really close mic thing. And I get some proximity effect as I get closer, which I'm pretty close most of the time. So my voice, if you were to meet me in real life and actually, talk to me, my voice probably wouldn't sound just like this. It'd probably sound closer to something like this if I move farther away. Now, to demonstrate this, and I just want to show you a couple of the possibilities. It's not going to be like a crazy thing where I show you all these different mics and what they sound like, things like that. Instead, we're just looking at this. So this is a Spitfire Symphonic Brass. And the cool thing is they have a mic mixer. Now, I don't know the mics they used, but you basically have a close mic. You have a Deca-Tree mic. I believe it's a Deca-Tree. So they have three mics up there on top to capture the sound. It's not an ambient mic situation quite yet. They have a separate mic for that. So that captures the sound in sort of a more broad sense, captures a little more of the room. And then you have your ambient mic, which captures, its sole goal is to capture the room. So this is basically almost like having a natural reverb. And so as I play it, we'll start with the close mic and check out how it augments your sound. Because you're going to hear things like this, and what creates sort of an intimate sounding track, sort of more of a Jack Johnson type vibe, it'll be a lot closer. Things will be a lot more intimate because they'll not have so much reverb. You won't catch as much as the room. And they'll usually have some in there, but not very much. So this is the close mic. And that's really cool, okay? So if you ever listen and you see a piano and you hear the keys and it's just all really close, you guess that they've used some sort of a close mic technique. If you're really into this, then you're going to be going after mic. I know people who can name it too. It's kind of scary. I mean, like, I can do okay and usually guess, the technique they used and whatever. But you'll see people who will name the mic model number. They'll go for it. They'll at least name the brand or the type and, things like that. Especially when you get into high-end mics and you do mic shootouts, you can hear differences, but sometimes you'd be surprised at how little difference there is. But usually that's when you're comparing, in my experience, when you're comparing two super nice mics, they're both going to sound generally super nice. So it's kind of interesting. If you compare a crap mic to a really nice mic, then obviously there'll be probably a substantial difference. There have been a couple times where I was actually sort of surprised at how little difference some crappier mics put out. Now, don't ask me mic model numbers, because they're my friends. I do not own that many mics. I borrow mics, man, right now anyways. So I'm going to turn off this close one. Here's the tree mic. Now check out how different this sounds. You may have a little bit of Contact has to stream the samples, so it may chop off a little bit, but just bear with it. Versus when we had the close mic up. So that's pretty cool. And then our last one's the ambient mic. So this is the room mostly. See how much more ring there is? And now we can combine them to augment our perception. So we combine some tree, maybe we want a closer, tight feel, turn the ambient down, but have just a little bit of it. And then we could do close to get rid of the ambient. And they have these staccato articulations. We could get a really tight, intimate. And so when you're listening, just be aware of this. Try and guess where mic positions are, and each mic will impart its own frequency response curve on the signal. So it'll emphasize some things and de-emphasize other things. There are producers, I can't remember his name right now, but he does not use EQ when he's recording. He uses a different mic. So I'm not that rich, obviously, from previous things I've just said. So I use EQ. I capture stuff with the mic, the best mic I can get my hands on, and then I do, I engineer it to make it sound good. And you can get really decent sounding stuff. But if you do have the luxury of having a bunch of mics, you should really get in the habit, because then if you capture the source well, then you're going to capture the rest of it will be much better off. You won't be trying to fix stuff later. It'll sound good from the beginning. So like, yeah, time and money are the two luxuries there. But yeah, that's it. So that's natural mic placement, how it can sort of influence it. This is like an art. Like, I've gone to school for this, and we've looked at mics, we've shot out mics, we've put mics on all sorts of different things. We've looked at what they do. We've looked at the components, how they're built, things like that. So in this case, so this is just like a really broad thing for people if you've never really thought about this. So when you listen, next time you're listening to a piano, ask yourself, where did they put those mics when they recorded that, orchestra or whatever? Did they spot mic a couple individual instruments? You don't have to know like crazy microphone knowledge to be able to guess some basic things. That way, next time when you're about to record something, you can, draw on this knowledge and sort of say, hey, well, I think they put it here, and you can experiment and you can better correlate that. And then you can also know how much of it is the room that they're in that made the recording sound that way, and how much was just where they put the mic. Did they do a close mic? Because if they did, it's going to sound a lot more tight. Versus if they did a farther away mic and you get a lot more of the room, you'll be able to pick that kind of stuff out. And then, of course, they could have recorded a close mic, and then what they could have done was they could have added a reverb. So if we send this contact to an instance here and add some reverb, we can augment the space. And you see, now we get sort of that space back a little bit. And so it sounds almost like we have our ambient mic on. So they could be doing that too. So some people do that. They go for the close mic. I know it's big in the 70s, and then you try and recreate the space. So you capture it with no reflections whatsoever. But yeah, that's that. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope this increases your listening experience, just makes you a little more aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it. And also, when you get a sample library, you should be freaking aware of this, because this can make a huge difference in how real your samples sound, how good it sounds, how easy it is to create a space for your sounds. It's the reason why some instruments are so much fun to work with and intuitive, why others require quite a bit of work and some foreknowledge to get a decent sound out of them. So yeah, support me on Patreon, subscribe, and have a blessed day.